pushing the go live button.
All right.
Right.
We're live.
Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is the countdown to year zero get together, the panel discussion. And I hope you all had a good time watching it, so you know what the movie is about. And so today we're going to just discuss the implications of this pandemic and how it is impacting our project to overcome year zero. So Vegan World 2026, I just actually wrote a white paper on it. So if you get a chance, go to our website, climatehealers.org, and look under white papers, and you will see a white paper on Vegan World. So that's about the project and what we are trying to do. How do we look at this particular era, when we are going through this pandemic, and how do we contribute positively to get to a world that is good for all of us, that's thriving for the animals and thriving for all human beings? Good morning, Dani.
Good morning, Sailesh.
How are you?
Hey, Dani Rukin in the house.
Good morning, everybody.
It's great to see you all. It's great to have this reunion. I think it's been wonderful. Cowspiracy was last week, and before that it was What the Hell. So I've had a great time just talking to people.
Thank you for doing this, Dr. Rao.
Thank you for being part of it. Thank you for being part of it all along. So Jane, let me start with asking you, how did you come about making this movie, and how has it impacted your life?
Well, I came upon it. I stumbled upon it. I went to Rowdy Girl Sanctuary in Texas, which that's Renee King-Sonnen, the former cattle rancher's wife who turned her husband vegan, turned her cattle ranch into a vegan animal sanctuary. And she's a living example of what basically needs to happen all across the United States and the world. And I was on this grassy plain listening to this guy talk, and everybody was shopping and having a good time and, doing the sort of tap dancing around this place. And so not that many people were listening to him. And that guy was you, Dr. Rao. And you said what I had been wanting to hear for forever. But until you said it, I didn't realize that's exactly what I need to hear. And you said, we're going to create a vegan world by 2026. We know why we have to do it. We know when we have to do it by 2026. That's the moment where if we continue at this rate, we will have destroyed all wildlife vertebrates, essentially. And we'll be left with maybe a few squirrels running around. And all we need to do is figure out how to do it. And when you said that, it was like an explosion in my brain. I was like, yes, because I remember having read about the women in Northern Ireland who got a Nobel Peace Prize for stopping the Troubles. And the Troubles were obviously the sectarian violence that was tearing people apart. And ultimately, a kid was shot on a lawn, and a woman stepped out of her house and said, enough. She just said, this is going to end. We are going to stop the sectarian violence. This is madness. Everybody laughed in her face. Oh, yeah, right. You're going to stop the violence, and the British government and the IRA. Come on, lady. But what they said later was, until you set a grand intention, until you say what you want, you cannot achieve it. You must state what you want. And it always seems far-fetched at first, because it's a grand intention. It's a big ask. So when I heard you do that, I was like, yes, finally, somebody is saying what we want. So I was very taken with your talk, and also how you talked about rapid social change can and does occur. You used the example of the moon landing, where when John F. Kennedy said we're going to put a man on the moon, people scoffed, and then, yep, they got a man on the moon. And you used gay marriage, where back when I was a kid, and I'm gay, the idea of even saying you were was unthinkable, pretty much. I mean, some brave people did, but it was not encouraged, to put it mildly. And the idea of people of the same sex getting married was just like, yeah. And now it's legal. So you used a whole bunch of examples like that, like the internet, something that I remember my first computer. I was like, what is this? I got to program it to turn it on. And now, boom, you know, our phone. So when you explained it, I was like, wow. And then you said you're a systems analyst and your job is to break down big problems into small chunks and make it happen. And I was like, wow, good, because I can't create a vegan world by 2026 on my own. We need somebody who's organized. And so I just was like, yes, now we have a plan of action and we have a methodology, because you said, since you were instrumental in designing and accelerating internet speeds, and you are a PhD from Stanford who worked for many years at one of the big companies, technology companies, and you were instrumental in making the speed so fast, that you have the know-how and that you were going to use the same methodology that they use to create a fast-moving internet and accelerate the internet speeds. And you were going to use that to accelerate our transition to veganism. And so I just was like, this is what I've been looking for. It's great to do marches. It's great to do protests. And of course, we cover them all the time on Jane Unchained. We're a nonprofit 501c3 news network for animal rights, climate change, against climate change, veganism, human health, all of it centered around, of course, the transition to veganism. And it's janeunchained.com if anybody's interested. In fact, I want to share this on my Facebook page right now. So maybe I'll let Dani talk for a bit. But just to wrap it up, so I just was like, I want to get on board with this, Dr. Rao. And then I was talking to another one of my heroes, Anita Krines, the founder of the SAVE movement. And she was working on a video project. And I had mentioned to her, well, you know, Dr. Rao has invited a select group of people to Costa Rica to go see a cattle ranch that had been reforested and turned back into a natural forest, which is something we have to do to millions and millions of acres of cattle ranching land and farmland. And she said, well, while you're down there, you know, shoot some good video of it. I might be able to incorporate in my project. So I'm no cinematographer, but luckily there's something called autofocus. So I do have one good camera, a Canon camera. So I just went down there and I started shooting. And it was like everything that came out of Dr. Rao's mouth was like a gem. And at the end of it, you know, Anita said, well, I'm moving in my project. I had all this footage. She was doing something that didn't quite match that particular footage. So I had all this footage. And I was like, whoa, well, I've been sticking the camera into these people's faces for 4 or 5 days. I better do something with it. So then it just so happened that I was asked to speak at the Hilton Head Veg Fest down on the East Coast. I forget exactly where it is. But in any case, then this guy called me, Jeff Adams, who's a vegan from North Carolina. And he said, Jane, I'm depressed. I'm down. I don't know a lot of vegans in my neighborhood, and I don't feel like I'm really using my skills as a videographer and an editor to help our movement. Would you mind if I came to Hilton Head and videotaped your speech? I said, of course. So he videotaped the speech. Then we all went out to dinner later, and over a great vegan dinner, he was saying how he felt like he wanted to do more. And I said, well, I'll put you to work right now. We're going to a Vegan World 2026 conference in Mesa, Arizona, coming up pretty soon, where Dr. Rao is going to start this campaign, this project, Vegan World 2026. We're going to all break down in teams. We're going to be taking all the big problems and putting them onto chalkboards and assigning task force groups to each one. Why don't you come and shoot it? Because I can't do everything. I can't participate in the conference and go live for Jane Unchained, our nonprofit news network, and also shoot a documentary at the same time. And he said, sure. So he came. I said, you know, I'll pick up your plane fare. It's next to nothing. It's a flight there. He did such an amazing job shooting and editing for next to nothing. I mean, really, I know people who spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on their documentaries. This was very little. And so a big shout out to Jeff Adams, who's a great guy. So then we shot, I found that as we were putting it together, that we could incorporate a lot of things that a lot of the contributors had shot for Jane Unchained News Network. For anybody who doesn't know what the Jane Unchained News Network is, I was in mainstream journalism for 38 years. And so when I ultimately retired, I decided to use my skills, because I did, by hook or by crook, do animal rights news at CNN Headline News, at the telepicture show Celebrity Justice. I always managed to find a way to do animal rights news. I would very innocently say, do you mind if we do a little animal segment once a week? And then next thing you know, I was showing pig gestation crates and creating a whole, just doing it and showing the truth, which now the networks have to show because of the COVID-19 riddling through all the slaughterhouses. They're finally starting to show what really goes on in those hellholes. So, where was I? So I started a nonprofit news network for animal rights. We have 70 volunteer contributors, citizen journalists around the world. Dani Rukin is one of them right there. She's going to take over in a second. And Renee King-Sonnen is another one. And they do incredible live videos. So then when we were sort of putting together what Vegan World 2026, we started realizing, oh my God, all the contributors have gotten these incredible moments. Like when Earthling Ed spoke in London before thousands of people just standing on steps, and he gave the most incredible speech. And one of our contributors caught it. And when Dani Rukin rushed to the scene of an overturned chicken truck. And so we put it all together, and voila, it was done very rapidly. We shot and edited the whole thing in a year and then had it out. And that's pretty much the story. So, yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Jane. Dani, you want to continue? How has it impacted you? You're on mute.
Unmute yourself. I'm going to share it out, so that's why I'm looking down.
Okay, yeah. What was the question?
How has Countdown to Year Zero impacted you, and what are you doing now in the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah. Oh, just a tiny little question. I'm still where Jane was. Jane was talking about how things came to be, because that's one of the many things I love about Jane Velez-Mitchell is she doesn't just get an idea. She actually gets into action around it, and not tomorrow, not next week, not next year, like right away. And it does make things happen. I love the story of the woman, where the child was killed and she was like, enough. And I think that is true, historically speaking, when just enough of us say enough, then that's when things change. And we don't waste time listening or bothering with the people who are saying that'll never happen, or it's impossible, or we love meat, or whatever the story is. And I think I can say the same. I was actually yesterday, it was on Kathy Stevens, of the founder and executive director of the Catskill Animal Sanctuary. She is such a powerhouse. She had me on as her guest yesterday on her podcast, All Beings Considered. So I feel like I talked for like an hour and a half about everything that matters to me. So it should all be fresh. And I want to say the reason why I know Kathy Stevens is that when I was at the Animal Rights National Conference in DC a couple of years ago, Jane had said, that's Kathy Stevens, get her. I want to, get her story. I didn't even know who she was. And so I reached out to her, and we went out on the terrace at the conference, and I had one of the best interviews I've ever had. Her story's amazing, and it's just incredible because she actually grew up like on a farm. And I think her story is that one day she was sitting there and they were eating dinner, and, Dad said something like, finish your steak. That's Daisy. And Daisy was one of the beloved cows there. And she made the connection. She now has an amazing sanctuary where they do vegan cooking and education, and people get to connect with the animals, like all the sanctuaries that are doing good work. And like Rowdy Girl, where when people connect with the animals, it is transformational. And so one of the things that I think is important as a result of that conversation yesterday is that there is no right way or wrong way. Just get out there and do something. Vegan World 2026, I agree with Jane, and I agree with you, Dr. Sailesh Rao. That is what's so important, is we have to state it, we have to claim it, and then we do whatever it takes. Don't listen to the naysayers. If some people say, you know, when I went out and did solo demos and people said, and it would get, you know, hundreds of thousands of views, but and people would say, that's not going to work. That's not going to get people to like us. That's not going to get people to want to convert. It's just like, good. Let's have that conversation. There's, you know, thousands of comments going out. Yes, she's a hero. No, she's ruining the movie. It's like, yeah, baby, let her rip. So I think the most important thing, so some will say, don't make us look bad. Well, in Woolworths at the lunch counter, when the blacks went to the lunch counter for the civil rights movement and sat down when they weren't even legally allowed to sit at the lunch counter, there were people who said, don't make us look bad. Well, guess what? That was part of the movement. And I think that every single thing we do, you know, the SAVE movement recently had a coronavirus lockdown, you know, confinement challenge. Do that. Get under a table or a chair or in a little box or a cage and show what it's like to be one of the animals during the pandemic.
Dani?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say something I forgot to mention.
Yes.
Countdown to Year Zero, what we're talking about today, is available on Amazon Prime. It's free for Amazon Prime members and just 99 cents for everyone else. So Countdown to Year Zero, maybe you can put the link up. I'm going to try to put the link up in the comment section so people actually watch it. But I want you to explain your scene in Countdown to Year Zero, where you came upon the chicken truck and you went there. Yeah. And that's
I'm getting there. I thought we had 2 hours. I thought. Yeah. So, and what I want to mention is on All Beings Considered yesterday, I did talk about Countdown to Year Zero being on Amazon Prime.
Oh,
and
great.
99 cents if you're not.
No, so, I forgot to mention it. That's why I wanted to mention it. So people know if you want to see it, it's on Amazon Prime.
But I think what I want to say, what I want to make clear is that don't worry about how you're doing and what you're doing. And just do something every day. Wake up and say, what can I do today for the animals? That's all every day. It's just somehow, I don't know what I do. I just end up, something happens and I'm doing 60 things, even while still holding down a full-time job. So with the chicken truck, what happened was we were actually organizing Direct Action Everywhere disruption at a grocery market. And then we got word that a truck with 6,000 chickens overturned up in Washington State. We're here in Portland, Oregon. And we made a split decision. Do we continue with what we had planned, or do we individually, to the best of our ability, get up there and be there for the chickens and see what we find? And so we decided to do that. So a bunch of us drove up there, and when I got there, I also went Jane Unchained live while I was driving up there. See, that gets everybody ready. Like, we're getting up there, call the county, find out what's the news doing. It's just like, just get rolling. So got there. And the minute I got there, I couldn't believe what I saw. It was horrific. It was like out of a horror movie, but worse. And as some of us know, chickens have, in many ways, the worst of it. It's just the numbers are unbelievable. If anybody here knows the numbers, they can talk about that. But in this case, of course, the mainstream news did cover it. And the main thing they wanted to let people know, it was at a very busy intersection. They wanted to assure people that the driver was not injured. And right there, you know what that means for us. So I got in there, and right away, the horror show was the chickens they're already in horrific conditions. They're already suffering. And you could see that a lot of what you could see, the carnage, wasn't even just the overturn. It was what they already looked like being in transport. So that story just showed itself. I got right in there. We went Jane Unchained live, and I went to where the suffering was, and right away you get the troopers and stuff saying, "Excuse me, ma'am, excuse me." Well, right away when they call me ma'am, then forget it. This isn't going to go well. Of course, love-based, but so they were, basically telling me you can't be there. Well, that's the minute you tell me I can't be there, that's, that I'm going to stay, because what I had to decide in a split second was, you can't be there, but this is where the suffering is. So I just kept filming, and I just kept filming and then reporting on it. Now, what happened from there is eventually I did have to move away from there. When they start really, closing in on you, you have to make that decision to now move away. So then I followed their orders and I moved away, but I stayed rolling. And as we know, when you go live, usually, you might lose people after a little while, but this was so unbelievable that I think this thing rolled for almost 2 hours, and people stayed with it as the story was unraveling. And that's when, you're reporting, you have to be talking about what's, you want to show what's going on, a picture shows 1,000 words. And then you have to also know when to comment on what's going on. So the big, what was really, really upsetting is that a fellow activist, Amber Canavan, had seen a chicken coming up the hill. Actually, I was the one who saw the chicken. And since I was going live, I couldn't really do anything. So I mouthed, "Look at the chicken." And the next thing you know, an activist grabbed it, and she felt, I will not let, this chicken was running up the hill, running away from it all. And she held on to it and did what any decent human being would do. But most of us aren't brave enough, because she wasn't willing to let go of that chicken. It's like, you're going to have to arrest me. Because she had earlier been down there negotiating with them, trying to talk to them about, please release these chickens, the ones who you're not going to use. They're not going. So they were putting chickens back onto the truck to go to slaughter, or they were going to, get rid of the chickens. So, but they still weren't willing to have any kind of, and nothing the activists could do would change their mind. So she decided civil disobedience, grab the chicken. And that's what made the news. When you are willing to resist arrest nonviolently, then the public has to decide. This is an uprising the book is about. Then the public has to decide. They have to make a choice. Do I choose? And people are going to choose the chicken. It's appalling. That's the short version.
Oh, it was amazing. And then what about the woman you captured, Dani, crying next to the truck, and she was just leaning, and you said, "This is compassion. This is what compassion looks like, and we're lacking."
Yeah,
it was a great moment. And, I want to say something. Dani Rukin was a meat eater until very recently. And she, I think, epitomizes how people can make that transition and have that moment of awakening and then go into 100% diametrically opposed behavior and thought process. Haven't you said, Dani, that you protest outside restaurants where you used to eat and go in and eat steak and other meat items?
Yeah, not outside, inside.
Oh,
yeah, and it's
ironic.
It's ironic because a couple times that's happened, I wasn't the one who chose the place. It was like we'd go there, and I'm like, oh my God, the last time I was here, I was a patron, and I would have been one of those people. I wouldn't have been like one of the rude people who, gives us the double, whats and the whole thing. I would have been one of those people like, can't they get a life? I've paid good money to have this experience. I've worked hard all week. I'm having my Friday, chill out. So, that's how fast this shift can happen. When you wake up, speaking truth to power, that I've always been. I didn't change. That didn't change. But what changed was that I was willing to open my heart and mind to the truth. When I saw it presented to me, I was willing to shift my idea of how I thought things are supposed to be and let go. I mean, I had no willpower. I could not have given up cheese and all those things that was my identity, my life. I could not have done that without something bigger than myself. And that's what is the key. We need something bigger. Yeah.
I don't want to like hijack this, but I really want to bring in Renee King, because we're talking about Countdown to Year Zero, the documentary about the work of Dr. Sailesh Rao and the need to transition to a vegan world by 2026, or we're going to face ecological collapse that's going to make the current economic situation with the pandemic seem like just an appetizer to the ultimate catastrophe. And Renee, you also went to Costa Rica. I met Dr. Rao, who is the centerpiece of the whole documentary, at your former cattle ranch turned vegan animal sanctuary. And I heard his message thanks to you. And then you were one of the 12 people that Dr. Rao, along with his wife and a couple of other wonderful people, 12 of us in all, went down to Costa Rica. And you ended up having sort of the opening comment in the movie. And I don't know if you remember that moment where we're walking around and I'm trying to get a comment from you. And I was like, I want something, you know, dynamic. And then you finally exploded and gave that incredible statement where you go, we're killing, we're killing, we're killing. We're just a killing machine. Remember that?
I do remember that. It was what's that?
That was the opening of the whole documentary.
I couldn't believe, you know, it was so interesting to be there at Costa Rica with everyone, particularly watching you. I had no idea what you were doing, of course, never do.
Neither
but
did I.
You were lugging around, you were lugging around all this equipment and just doing so much footage and everywhere in the rain. It didn't matter what was going on, umbrellas over you. And you kept like, it was almost harassment. It was like, Renee, I know you have it in you. You know, I know you've been through this. You know what's going on. You used to do this. And finally I just went, well, I think I said the F word, but I think you probably cut that out. But, you know, because I was really, really, you know, it was a very, it's always difficult for me to, when I get in that moment where my emotions just override my good sense, that is usually the best footage. You know, that's the best things that come out, is when I just don't think about it. I'm just allowing what needs to be said to come through. And you caught that, and it's an amazing experience. You know, I was thinking just a while ago where I met Dr. Rao. If you don't mind, can I elucidate on that a bit? I met Dr. Rao at CowCon, and I had gone to CowCon, you know, Kip Anderson's conference, and I had never heard of Dr. Rao, and this soft-spoken man, and I heard him. And I not only heard him, but I looked at his books, and I was so taken by the honesty and the message in his books about ahimsa and the butterfly. You know, it's those two. Dr. Rao, you can help me remember the names of them. I for whatever reason I always space out on the names, but there's something about ahimsa. Carbon Dharma.
Carbon yoga.
Yeah. Yes, in carbon yoga. And it's about the butterfly, you know, this story that he tells about the caterpillar eating everything in sight, and then the butterfly coming to life from all of that, and just surviving or thriving on nectar instead of all this junk. And he convinced me in a way that I didn't really need much convincing. I was really needing validation that, you know, we could have a vegan world by 2026, that it wasn't about whether or not everybody was vegan on that day, January 1st, 2026. It was, as Jane put it, the mindset, the belief, putting that belief into action. And I've always been that type of person that really believes that. I've kind of programmed myself out of all the abuse and trauma and stuff by doing just that. So it made sense to me to do this. But I was looking on my phone just now because I was thinking, you know, I met him at CalCon, and then I just out of the blue texted you, Dr. Rao, on August 24th, 2017. And I said, hey, Sailesh, this is Renee with Rowdy Girl Sanctuary. I'm in communications with Dolly right now. You know, Dolly, our friend, Dolly Ahuja. And I was so looking forward to Sunday because you came down and we went to the Jane Church and we did all that. And I met you at CalCon. We're having our Vegan May Fest at Rowdy Girl on May 19th. And I would love to invite you to come speak. Kip Anderson referred you because he couldn't come. And then look what's happened. I am so honored that Jane came too and that you two met. And then we went to Costa Rica and now here we are. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, Jane, your film, I saw the very, very beginnings of Countdown to Year Zero, at your house. And what has developed is genius, pure genius. I mean, every scene is riveting. You know, if you haven't seen Countdown to Year Zero, this is true. This is not some fairy tale, some made up idea, that we're going to fall off of a cliff, y'all. This is the truth. And then the beauty of it is that we're supposed to be doing this. See, it's if we stop fighting the idea and start embracing it, then we too can evolve from that caterpillar to this butterfly. Because every human has within them their innate compassion. It's just been covered up with everything that the caterpillar needs to eat. So eat away, but get there, damn it. Get there, evolve. It's time to wake up. And what's happening in the pandemic right now, it could not be a better time in her story. To heck with history. It's her story. It's time for us to evolve into everything that we are, to embrace the mother. Our Father Earth has had his way for how long now? And he's just taken it a little bit too far. This entire patriarchal system is just not worked too well. It's time for the mother to say, done, enough. And she has spoken. And she will continue to speak until we awaken. I believe that.
That was powerful, Renee. Thank you so much.
Powerful.
You are such a great example, because you show that compassion is innate in us, and you found it when Tommy asked you to take care of Rowdy Girl, right? And then you asked him, "Why are we eating someone else's cows?" I think a lot of farmers are going through the same kind of experience now, because they're having to kill their own animals.
Yes, they have to face the death moment.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm getting so many emails, guys, so many messages. Just as I spoke about a few months ago, it's coming to pass. We have to have land set aside for these animals. If we had land right now that we as humanity was taken care of, if we could collectively get our movement to get to a place to where we could get land, whether it be purchased, grants, donated, it doesn't matter. We've got to get land set aside, and we need to take care of that land, restore it, regenerate it, revitalize it. Because when we have animals that need land, the land will take care of the animals if we take care of the land. And, these animals do not need our interference, except that we have forced them into a position to where they are dependent on us for every single thing they do. Their breath, their food, they're confined. Of course, you all know that. But they need the land. They deserve the land. It's incumbent upon us to figure this out. It really is.
Yeah, thank you for all the work you're doing with the Agriculture Fairness Alliance. I think the letter that you sent to the senators and congressmen and congresspeople, that is powerful. that again is an action. We are asking them to put their money where their mouth is. No.
Yeah, if you haven't signed that, guys, I've got it shared on all of my pages. The Agriculture Fairness Alliance, took the Register Advocacy program, and they talked to me and Paul Berry for, I guess, 9 or 10 months, and we formulated the At-Risk Farmer and Rancher Diversification Act that is now, a thing. It is legislation. It's legislation. It's going into Congress. We're doing our best to get it to become a bill. So please, if you haven't signed your name to that, look for it, do what you got to do, sign it, send it. Connie Spence and Laura Reese they're just unstoppable with this. And I'm really grateful they reached out to me, and that I'm part of that. It's very humbling to see this happen. Thank you for mentioning it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is our moment. Now even meat eaters are saying it's immoral to eat meat. I mean, we've gotten to the point where they're saying it, not just us.
Jim Cramer said on Mad Money, he said, with all these problems at the slaughterhouses and they're closing down, and these workers are, I'm not going to quote him, but we all know the problems at the slaughterhouse with the COVID-19 slaughterhouses being one of the key hotspots, along with prisons and nursing homes. And the slaughterhouse workers are getting sick, and some of them are dying. He said, try a Beyond Meat burger. I mean, this is Jim Cramer, the epicenter of, he's Mad Money. And he's saying it. Mark Cuban of Shark Tank went vegetarian. He just invested in Unreal Deli. And by the way, it's very important for us to keep our vegan restaurants alive and going during this. And there's an incredible organization called Support and Feed, supportandfeed.com. It is run by Maggie Baird, who happens to be Billie Eilish's mom. She's a vegan and an activist. And what it does is you go to supportandfeed.com, you donate, and then they give money to the vegan restaurants to feed the first responders and people in need, houseless people, etc. So you can either give to your favorite vegan restaurant in New York, LA, or Philadelphia, I believe. You could start one in your own city. They have an instruction manual on right there. It's pretty easy how you can get your own city as part of the program. And you can also just donate directly to Support and Feed, and they'll divvy it up, but they will take the food from the vegan restaurant. So the vegan restaurant has money coming in to make the food, because obviously people aren't going and sitting in the restaurant. And then they're feeding doctors, nurses, paramedics, police officers, firefighters, and other people in nursing homes, etc. It's a brilliant concept. And I urge everybody to support and feed. And I want to mention a couple of other things. We have a very exciting project coming out soon at Jane Unchained that is going to connect vegans around the world together. And it's going to be an app that will be coming out soon. So what we need to do is make sure that everybody signs up. Once we get people signed up, it has no value unless people sign up. So we're going to be sending that out soon from Jane Unchained, and just ask everybody to sign up. It's a fun app that's going to connect vegans around the world. So look out for that.
Awesome. Thank you. So are there any questions from the chat box?
Well, we've got a lot of comments. By the way, can you put up, Deborah, the link to the documentary on Amazon Prime? If you just Google Countdown to Year Zero Amazon Prime, the link will come up. And it's free for Amazon. It's free for Amazon Prime members, and just 99 cents for everybody else. So, I mean, I know it's there somewhere, but it'd be good to pop it up every so often since we're talking about it so people can see it. And I would suggest, if you're already vegan watch it with a pre-vegan. I don't say non-vegans, I say pre-vegans, because I do find that people who are not vegan are very, it is a truth bomb, not because, oh, it's my documentary or Jane Unshane's documentary. It's so many people that we were able to take some of the best moments from the or the worst moments from the live videos that you capture. One of the things about live video is that you capture things that you wouldn't be able to capture if you came with a bunch of equipment and set it up. And let's say a pig vigil where we bear witness to the pigs going into the slaughterhouse. You could stand there and set up all your equipment and wait for that perfect moment. But a lot of times it happens when you're just holding a stabilizer with your phone and something happens and you grab it because you're there, and it's just that spontaneous moment. And that happened with one of the folks videotaping. Oh, I was live and this pig trying to get water as the truck was moving away. And then I turned around to the woman who was giving the pig water, and I said, you know, what, I don't know, I just asked her, how you feeling or whatever. And she started to cry and just was so articulate about how people need to see this. And that was just caught on the fly because of the live video. So it's not so much that it was all these wonderful people who go out as a Jane Unchained volunteer contributor, citizen journalist for people, animals, and the planet, and go live at these events. And just like Dani captured that moment with the overturned chicken truck. Another one of our contributors and one of our top people at Jane Unchained, Paige Parsons Roach, was driving. She saw a truck filled with cows, pulled over on the side of the road. She pulled over and she started just talking to these cows that were in this, who were in this truck. I always say who. And it's heartbreaking. And her sadness was translated there. And it's not all sad moments. I mean, we also show Vegan World 2026 in action, and how you, Dr. Rao, because you're organized, can you come over and work on my laptop desktop, which is like, looks like, it's like the cosmos exploded onto my desktop. But you're very organized. And so you could create these systems where we can move toward that. And I wanted to ask you, Dr. Rao, since what we did with the film was show your plan in action for Vegan World 2026 and how you've created these teams, and we were all clustered in little groups in Mesa, Arizona, the Vegan World 2026 headquarters where you happen to live, at this conference, breaking down different problems. Renee was talking about transitioning farmers, and I was involved in that. Dani was talking about something else, somebody else. We were all dealing with different aspects of the crisis. You had doctors, you had lawyers, you had all sorts of people. Where is it now? Where do we stand on Vegan World 2026?
Yeah, it is now pretty active on Basecamp, and we are meeting once a week to talk about our progress. And I just wrote a white paper on what this process looks like so that people can read it and understand what we are up to. And it also, it's a little bit like, we have a very well organized system for inflicting hate right now, or inflicting fear, right? It's a fear-based system. It's a top-down system. It's basically, we know it is causing a lot of the destruction on the planet. So we have to now create the same kind of organization for a love-based system, something that is based on love. So this is what Martin Luther King was also saying, right? The forces of love could be as organized as the forces of hate. We would have the beloved community anytime, we could create that very soon. So, and now we have the tools and technologies to do that. We have the ability to do that, to create this whole system around love. So that it starts with, what is the game we are playing? What are the stories we are telling? So the story we are telling is the story of the caterpillar right now. It's like we don't belong in nature. That's the kind of story we tell, right? So we separate ourselves, we isolate ourselves. And so we have to tell a different story in which we are the caterpillar now about to become the butterfly. So we've been put into this chrysalis phase by the COVID-19. So literally, we are going through this caterpillar into the butterfly through this chrysalis phase. So I write, how do we come out of this as a vegan world? So it's a post-pandemic vegan world. How do you birth a vegan world out of this pandemic? So we need to look at it like that. And so we've been put into this chrysalis phase. People are waking up. They're seeing that their consumption of animals is causing all these pandemics. And it's becoming more and more obvious. And people are seeing that farmers don't want to even go through that. They don't want to be doing this kind of work. And even meat eaters are saying it's immoral to continue eating meat. So we are reaching a point where it has been framed as a moral issue. And anytime we get to a point where something is framed as a moral issue, the explosion is exponential. So it just goes up exponentially. Okay, where people recognize it. This is really what happened in the Khadi movement. When Gandhi framed wearing British clothes as immoral, that you have to wear Indian clothes and that's the only moral thing to do, then almost every Indian realized they had to wear Khadi clothes. At first they complained to him saying, it's more expensive. These cotton mills were producing clothes at very cheap rates. So it's much cheaper to wear the British clothes. So why should we wear your Khadi clothes? And so this is when Gandhi said, okay, look at me. I'm going to wear just a loincloth and show you how it can be done. You're living in India, right? So you don't really need too much. So this is when he started changing his clothes. So he was wearing just a loincloth. And so then, of course, people said, I can't argue with that. So I have to change to Khadi clothes. So when he framed it as a moral issue and said, please, all of us have to do this for the good of the country, good of our society, they did it. And the same thing is happening now with eating meat. It is being framed as a moral issue. How can you let these people go out there and get infected just because we want to have a burger? So that's the framing that's happening now. So which means that it's going to grow exponentially. And when it's growing exponentially, we need to have all of the other collateral, the institutions, the infrastructure, the new currency, the new constitution that you need for a vegan world. All that has to be put in place. And that's what we should be working on right now. And so we did, like Shelley Ostroff, who's on Basecamp, her team, worked on codes for a healthy earth. That is really the constitution for a vegan world. So she's worked on the constitution for a vegan world. She got a lot of people to sign that. So that is saying from now on, the only legitimate purpose of governance is to cultivate and protect the health and vitality of the planet and all its inhabitants, okay, for generations to come. So that's what that constitution is based on, the codes for a healthy earth. So we are building all of the things that you need for a love-based society that is organized. See, right now, all economic activity happens through fear. If you don't work, you're not going to you won't eat and you're going to starve to death. Okay, that's the fear that drives people to go to work. And most people do things they really don't want to do, but they're forced to do it because that's what the people with the money want them to do. So how do you create an economic activity out of love? How do you create an economic activity in a system in which everyone feels secure? Everyone feels like they do belong. Okay? How do you do that? Well, we did show that in the community kitchen in Phoenix. We have done this for several years now, where we give away our food and then people eat the food, and then we ask for volunteers to clean the dishes, to clean the floor, to mop the floor. And the goal is at the end of the dinner, you have to leave the kitchen completely clean, the dining area completely clean. And so usually you need to get 3 volunteers for taking care of the floors and 3 volunteers for washing the dishes. And every week, someone or the other volunteers. We don't know who's going to volunteer, but someone volunteers. Why? Because they want to feel part of the community. So that's a love-based economy, and we do that actually at home. We do have a lot of economic activity that we do out of love. We're not looking for money, when we do that. So we know it's possible to do that. It's just making that an organized system for a love-based economy. And so for that, you have to create the infrastructure for it. And that's what we've been working on. And so we have an app, again, just like you said, you have an app that's connecting vegans. We are working on an app that would allow, that would formalize the support and feed. Something like support and feed, but may formalize it so that everyone anywhere can get involved right away. You don't have to go to a website and check off something and get them to send you materials. You can get involved because the app allows you to create that. So it gets restaurants to join up and then allow them to provide food to people who need the food. So once we get the food, the hunger out of the way with good vegan food, I think you'll have a lot of people wanting to volunteer for the vegan movement to create this love-based economy. Mm. So I mean, it's thinking about things differently because it's not the same old economics. Okay? All the old economics is based on scarcity. If you don't have scarcity, there is no value in the current system. Because if you have, water everywhere that's pure, and you can just go to any stream and drink water, why would you buy bottled water? Right? So you would never buy bottled water. So the people who are selling bottled water say, hey, I have to make pure water scarce. So they say, continue polluting. It's okay. So they encourage others to continue the pollution so that we create a scarcity out of this abundance. So we have a system that's based on scarcity, and that is artificially creating scarcity. But we have natural abundance underneath it. So this is what we need to be creating, and we need to be basically fostering that in our systems as well, right? So, so that's rethinking economics.
Dr. Rao, can I ask you, with all the money that the U.S. government is now spending to combat the economic collapse of the coronavirus, sending people checks, and we obviously now there's a move to have even more stimulus. Is that going to lead to, in other words, we know that the pandemic, which is nature's way of saying stop abusing animals, which I believe is a very clear message, although some people around here, try to talk to my neighbors about it, my pre-vegan neighbors don't seem to always make the connections, but and I use them kind of like a test case of how are Americans thinking, right? And nevertheless, if you had to look at the pandemic from the perspective of animals, you would say it started because of animal abuse, most likely in the slaughter market in Wuhan, China. Even if you believe the laboratory story, that's still the torture of animals. It's just a different location, but they're both torture of animals. So it started with the torture of animals. Now it's involved more torture of animals. We're seeing the insides of these slaughterhouses on cable television for the first time. We're seeing the impact on humans. So you could see how it would send the message, go plant-based. And we've discussed that. But from the perspective of the pandemic creating a new economic system, the stock market continues to do pretty well despite this pandemic, even though some people say get ready for the second crash. That this is sort of a false rally, but that it'll crash again. A false rally based on false optimism that this is going to go away. And then you have all the money that is being sent to people, which, I'm not an economist, but at a certain point, if you just keep sending out money, it's like printing paper. And does that money have very much value? And also the deficit skyrocketing. Do you see this as the beginning of an economic collapse, or is the Wall Street response going to be, well, yeah, the J.C. Penney's and the Neiman Marcus's are going under, but we're going to throw our money behind the high tech companies and it's going to be business as usual at the end of this?
To me, economics is how do we as human beings, as a species, organize our activity? How do we coordinate our activity so that we can all work together on something, okay? And so far, we've been coordinating our activities and working together in order to extract from the planet and feed it to people at the top, okay? Because they are the ones who are pulling us, making us do these things and pull it up. And the incentive for us to do that is that if you don't do it, you're going to go hungry. So that is the mechanism by which this is being done. It's a fear-based mechanism, right? There are very few of us who have said, "Oh, I have enough. I don't have to work anymore. I don't have to do this kind of thing, and I can now sit around and think about it." Which, fortunately, few of us have been given that opportunity, and so that we can actually figure out how we get out of this. And so the other way to create economic activity is, again, it's a different paradigm. It's a love-based paradigm. That's what we are all shooting for. That's what a vegan world is. Vegan world is a world of love, in which love is normal, right? In which compassion is normal. Compassion to all beings is normal. That's what we are shooting for. Okay, so the question is, how do you transition from where we are to where we need to go? And so I started off by proposing that we look at our money system as a game, because it is a game we are playing, okay? It's a game with pieces of paper with pictures of dead presidents on them, right? Mm-hmm. And so now, the people who are controlling the game are printing more and more pieces of paper with pictures of dead presidents on them. I mean, another $3 trillion, another $5 trillion. It's like trillions are nothing, right? And as long as we value that piece of paper, they can still keep printing it. Okay, as long as someone is buying those bonds, those government bonds, and saying, "Oh yeah, that I think the government will pay me back. They can pay me back this I can redeem this bond, and they'll give me interest on it as long as I hold it." Okay, as long as they believe that, they'll keep buying those bonds. And right now, what's happening is that the default currency in the world is the dollar. So people now have less and less faith in their own currencies, whether it is the rupee or the euro or whatever. And so they're buying dollar bonds. So they're converting their euros into dollars by doing that, right? And so this is why the US government is able to print more and more. I mean, what is it now? $20 trillion? How much is our debt? I know, $25 trillion. So we have to pay interest on that every year. So at some point, the tax revenues are going to be less than the interest we have to pay.
17.26 trillion.
Right. And they're planning to add another trillion.
Before COVID.
Exactly. So they're adding another 3 trillion, another 2 trillion. I mean, this is like going crazy, right? So at some point, someone is going to say, "Hey, this whole house of cards is going to fall apart. So let me redeem my bonds and get back my cash." And that's when the whole thing collapses. Okay. So
but will cash be valuable? If you're saying that, look, okay, so we have the Great Depression to look back on because there's plenty of articles. And of course, I wouldn't wish the Great Depression on myself or anyone else. Obviously, my dad went through the Great Depression, and I'm starting to really understand him better. He was born in 1916, and he was always very tight. He was a successful advertising executive, but he was really tight with money. And now I understand that he went through the Great Depression, and it changed their mentality. Like when we were growing up, if something had mold on it, he would just cut it off and say, "Eat it." He wasn't, he was an under tipper, which made me become an over tipper. But the whole point was that, there was an economic collapse, and stocks that used to be worth a lot went down to zero. People are saying it's different this time because the companies that are invested in cloud infrastructure and all of that, the technology companies are still doing very well. do you see a shift more to a technology company? Because the other thing, the other component of this whole drama is that when we're stuck at home because of the pandemic, nature comes out. Nature, this pandemic is actually reversing climate change somewhat, which humans couldn't do. We couldn't figure out the Paris Climate Agreement, and the United States has, basically under this administration thrown climate change under the bus. But now nature, by forcing us all to remain home, is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. And part of it is that the technology, as you mentioned a few weeks ago when I was talking to you, Dr. Rao, isn't it interesting that Mother Nature waited until we had Zoom and we had all these abilities to communicate at home? Do you think maybe that what's going to happen is with the collapse of just this past week, Neiman Marcus, JCPenney, all these old school companies, and then the thriving of these technology companies that are cloud-based, that essentially the whole society is going to change, where this is the new normal. Talking to people on Zoom, I can't tell you how many people who say, I don't want to go back to work. I'm working from home. I'm just as productive. If they force me back to work, I will quit. I've heard people say, if they force me back to work, I'll retire. If they force me to go back into the office, I'll quit. People there's tragedy, but it's like Charles Dickens said, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. There's horrible tragedy, and my heart goes out to everybody suffering and who's lost loved ones and lost their jobs. But by the same token, we're fashioning a new way to function. The old system. I live near Venice, California, essentially, right there. I used to work in Glendale. It took me 4 hours sometimes to get home. I would literally go to the movies at Universal City because I was like, what do I got to lose? It's not sustainable. Now the freeways are open. Now the air's clear. Now the birds are coming out. Now you see, wildlife on Michigan Avenue. So that is something we want to keep. Do you see, maybe as opposed to everything's going to collapse, it's all going to go to hell, blah, 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 that maybe there's a transformation happening in the economy where these old school companies like a Neiman Marcus, and by the way, I know this is the world's longest question, but when I was reading about Neiman Marcus's collapse, they said, instead of changing with the times, right, and transforming and realizing what younger people in the new generation wanted, they were just taking a lot of money out of their company and selling the same old bleep. How do I know? I cut up my needless markup card. That's what we all call it, needless markup, decades ago, after writing them a letter saying, stop selling fur or I won't shop here. And you know what? I've saved money ever since. I cut off my needless markup card, my Bloomingdale's card, all of those cards. I cut them up and I stopped using them because of fur, because they sell fur. So these companies are collapsing now, this old school companies, but the technology companies, the NVIDIAs and the, all those companies are thriving that are cloud-based. And people, while they're upset about being isolated, do like certain aspects of being able to do stuff from their house. It's idiocy for everybody to just drive across town every day when whatever they're doing, they could do right here from their computers.
Right. It is changing our the way we act as human beings, right? So this is why I say this is not a situation that can be reversed. This is the chrysalis phase of humanity. Okay, this is the chrysalis phase. And we have no choice but to become butterflies. So like you pointed out, nature is in charge. Nature figured out, nature is doing it at a time when we can be like this, right? We can be in the chrysalis. We can function because we are talking to each other on Zoom. We are able to communicate. And so we have to give credit to a larger intelligence that's at play all along. Mm-hmm. We think we are in charge, but we never have been in charge. In fact, the first 10,000 years, this is why we tell the story of the thermostat species. For the first 10,000 years, we were actually keeping the thermostat constant, and we didn't even know that's what we were doing. And then over the last 200 years, we created all these tools and technologies so that we understand what we did, so that we can become aware of it. And so then we can become conscious butterflies when we get to the butterfly phase, and become more humble. See, right now we call ourselves Homo sapiens sapiens. And sapiens means wise. We have been calling ourselves the wise hominid when we are doing absolutely stupid things.
We should call ourselves Homo stupidens.
Right. I mean, it's not that we have to start denigrating ourselves, but we need to recognize that we are not in charge. And we have been narcissists so far. As far as the other species are concerned, we were narcissists. We were psychopaths. We were like sociopathic species. So we were hurting them. And so they were probably all looking at us saying, when is this species going to get over this? Right? Now is the time for us to get over it and to acquire some humility. So I'm saying, when we get out of this phase, we need to call ourselves Homo Ahimsa. Homo Ahimsa, which is Judy Carmen's phrase. She's writing a book called Homo Ahimsa now. So which means it's the hominid that is non-violent. So we have to call ourselves by our characteristic, our character, as opposed to by our attribute of wisdom. It's not like how can you call ourselves wise? That's stupid to call yourselves wise, right? So I'm saying this is an evolution of our species. So we need to go from thinking that we are in charge and we are the bosses of the planet, we are the dominating species, etc., to saying nature has always been in charge. We are a part of nature, and as part of nature, this is our role. Our role is to be the caretakers of the planet, the thermostats for the planet, who have to maintain homeostasis for the planet. So make sure that the planet is thriving at all times. So that should be our new identity as a species. So it's literally, we are changing ourselves, right in front of our eyes. We are changing ourselves. And I think about it, you're alive at a time when humanity is going through such a huge transformation that in future, historians are going to look back and say, wow, look at that generation. Look at what they did. They created a vegan world.
But I have to ask you a provocative question. Again, looking at my neighborhood as just like a test case, and this is a relatively liberal, in other words, maybe you'd say, although I never make assumptions about, frankly, I find the people I would expect would want to go vegan often are very resistant, and the people I wouldn't expect would want to go vegan are very interested in the message. So it's very counterintuitive. In fact, there's a question to Dani about feminists and their openness to veganism, which I would love you to address, because there's been a tremendous just willful blindness amongst many feminists toward the horrific, for example, rape of farm animals, abduction of their babies, etc. But in terms of just doing a survey, of neighbors, there's the percentage that are making those connections that you're talking about. I don't see it. I read articles where people are making those connections, and now we have articles popping up in the Washington Post and occasionally in the New York Times, although there's a lot of bad reporting too. But there are articles now where basically our obsession with meat is killing us, things of that nature. Obviously, the cable news channels are talking all about the slaughterhouse workers. They call them meat plants or meat processing plants, but they're addressing the human rights aspect, the oppression of workers as regards to the meat industry. But I don't see a lot of everyday people, as Hillary Clinton would say, making that connection yet.
That's true, because you live in Malibu.
No, I don't live in Malibu.
Okay, sorry.
No, I live in the Venice, California.
Okay, Venice Beach. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you live in, what I meant to say was you live in the among the affluent people.
Yeah, but they're not making the connection. You'd think.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's the people who are the most, who have been the most coddled in the current system, it's harder for them to see it. But the people who have been oppressed in the current system, it's easier for them to see it. It's easier for them to see that the slaughterhouse workers are being oppressed, that the animals are being oppressed. So it's easier for them to make the connection first, but it's harder for the people who have been isolated, who are, see, literally we are in a system, right? It's a system that we are fighting. It's not the people, the system that we are fighting. And the system is designed to oppress the people at the bottom and the animals at the bottom, and then funnel wealth to the top. That's the purpose of the system at the moment. Okay, and it's been going on for 10,000 years. It's not like it just started, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. So all of the social justice issues, whether it is feminism or racism that we are fighting, they're all fighting for the same end result. We are all fighting for a world that's based on love, for a system that's based on love. That's what we are all looking for. But we are all coming to it from different directions. Some of us are coming to it from the animal rights direction. Some of us are coming to it from the feminist direction. Some of us are coming to it from the racial directions or caste directions. But we are all coming to the end goal is the same. And what we have to realize, each one of us has to realize, is that we win only when everyone wins. There is no winning just your cause. You cannot just win your cause and then expect that the world will be fine. No, the world is going to keep going in the same direction of more and more oppression until we address everyone's problems simultaneously. So that's how you have to deal with it systemically, right? So you have to create a system of love. And so what we have been working on, and we are doing modeling work now, is in a game that we can create that you can play along with the money game that you're playing now. Because I don't want to create a game in which you have to abandon the money game and play my game. You have to abandon this game and then play the game of love, right? You can play both simultaneously. And when you play both simultaneously and you get more and more people to play these two games simultaneously, then you change your behavior. Automatically you change your behavior because you're playing this new game. Okay, so you change your consumer behavior. So just like when we changed our consumer behavior and we started buying more and more plant-based foods, people had to create vegan restaurants. They had to give vegan options in fast food places. So they had to change their behavior too, right? The system had to change its behavior. So similarly, we have to create the second game and play the two games simultaneously so that you're forcing others to change their behavior, like other corporations to change their behavior. And the goal is that when we get out of this pandemic, we just say, I don't need to play the money game anymore. We can play this new game. We can play this new game only. And we are perfectly happy with this game of love that we are playing. So that's how you do a smooth transition from the caterpillar to the butterfly. But we'll see how it works. Yeah.
I see Turner says, sorry, but it has been said so many times now that I have to respond. I am not doing anything with regard to animal rights or human rights from a perspective of love. There is so much overuse of that word nowadays. Can you respond to that?
There is an horrendous overuse of the word, because we keep talking about love in a very crude sense, and it has been, the word has been misused, just like the word vegan is being misused. Vegan is now, people are trying to make the V word. Don't say the V word. I'm saying, no, I still want to keep saying the V word, but I want to define it, tell you what it really means. And love also is the same way, but call it truth, call it truth instead of love. It's the same thing. Call it justice. It's the same thing. So the truth, as an engineer, I know that when you design something based on lies, when you design something based on pretending something is true when it isn't, or something isn't true when it is, then whatever you're designing will not work. Okay, and it will blow up. If you keep doing that, it'll blow up. This is what happened to the Space Shuttle Challenger. You know, the engineers said, hey, don't send it up when the launch temperature is below this ambient temperature because it's not going to withstand. The O-ring is not going to withstand the heat. The engineer said that, but the administrators at NASA said, we have to launch, otherwise we're going to lose face. So they went ahead and launched and the whole thing blew up, right? Mm. So engineering is about aligning with the truth. You know, we have to tell the truth. And we have to design according to the truth. Otherwise, whatever you're building will not work, will not match what you said you're going to build. So we said we were going to build a system where all men are created equal. We said we are going to build a system where we'll guarantee life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Is that what we actually built? No. And why is what we have built, our civilization, not match the culture that we came from, that culture that we are trying to build? Because we are not based on the truth. We are pretending something is true when it isn't. We are pretending that you need to eat meat, otherwise you'll never get any protein. That's a lie. We know it's a lie, and we know, and that lie is still being used. The executive order, where he said you have to keep slaughterhouses open because it's critical infrastructure, based it on the protein myth, saying we need the protein. Even though we are supposedly in a war, we are still lying to ourselves. So when you conduct a war with lies, you'll never win the war.
So you think that the war will be lost by the meat eaters, the meat producers?
Oh, yeah.
Because they've done full-page ads, Tyson, in newspapers all around the country saying our food infrastructure, equating food and meat falsely, is collapsing. And that gave the opening for the administration to say that slaughterhouses have to remain open under the Defense Protection Act because they're critical infrastructure. And of course, some of the union leaders representing those workers who are getting sick and dying are pushing back against that, but they still call themselves essential workers. So I actually, told one of them, I said, as long as you continue to describe yourself as essential workers, you're feeding into their storyline. And then they said, well, we can't get protective equipment unless we call ourselves essential workers. So they're kind of in a no-win situation a little bit. But I said, well, then you should say, if they continue to define them as essential workers, they need to have PPE. So it's a messy situation. Do you feel that the move by the administration to keep the slaughterhouses open is a defeat for us, or will it ultimately backfire on the meat industry as more and more workers and USDA inspectors continue to get sick and die? And as Claire Smith said, she had a question that there is now talk about the virus remaining and living on meat. And obviously I'm not a scientist, so I have no idea, but people are now, there is some concern that if people are eating meat where it's been processed by people who have COVID-19 and they're sweating on the meat, could that be transmitted to them? So in other words, do you think that keeping the slaughterhouses open is a win for the meat industry, or ultimately will it come back to bite them?
Well, the intent is to avoid having to pay unemployment benefits to workers who quit and things like that, right? So, because right now that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to force workers to come and work, and then the owners don't have to pay any liability. They don't have any liability because of the executive order, right? Because it's an essential infrastructure, right? Critical infrastructure. So it's being done to protect the owners and to throw the workers under the bus. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what they're doing. Telling the workers, you don't have any recourse because it's critical infrastructure. If you stop working, you're not going to get unemployment benefits. You're going to be forced to work, and people are being forced to work even though they are sick. So this is why it's spreading in that industry. And so I think it is definitely going to backfire. it's going to backfire because already people are saying, come on, this is not critical infrastructure. It's immoral to eat meat. So the demand for meat is going to keep going down. And so the government will have to keep bailing them out. And to bail them out, you have to keep printing more and more pieces of paper with pictures of dead presidents on them, So at what point does everybody say, look, this whole thing is a mess. And we might as well just take care of each other, and create our own economy like this.
Well, this is what I don't understand, what's not being done about the news is obviously pretty much controlled by the meat and dairy industry. Thank God for social media. So before anybody, says anything about Facebook or it's how we're getting our word out. Okay. So let's keep that in mind. Okay. I get stuff delivered here. It's like I'm taking my life into my hands. I put on my gloves, my mask. I'm trying to figure out where did I touch this, wipe everything down. But this is fruits, vegetables, nuts, and grains. I can't imagine somebody reading that there's, massive COVID-19 infections in these slaughterhouses where they wrap the meat with the plastic, and we know that the COVID-19 lives on the plastic. Coming home, in other words, if I order Beyond Meat, there's no expectation that the person who wrapped that or who has COVID-19 or a salad, a lettuce. But if there was somebody getting a piece of meat that's wrapped, there's a greater probability that whatever that packaging is infected with COVID-19. I mean, just from a practical standpoint, from a just strictly practical self-interest, do you think I would think that people would be concerned about buying products from the meat section.
Yeah, it is.
Nobody's talking about this. They're talking about the workers, but they're not talking about, I saw one of the union workers the union leaders talking about workers are sweating onto the food.
Right.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Dr. Rao.
No, go ahead.
No, that was it. I just wanted to make that point. Why isn't anybody talking about that?
It is getting out. The Jonathan Safran Foer wrote an article in the Washington Post. It is getting out now in the mainstream media that people are looking at this and saying, what are we doing to ourselves? I mean, US typically is the leader in any pandemic response. So far, that's been the way in the past. But this time, US is doing the absolute worst job possible. So we are botching it, and we are botching it for the rest of the world, right? Because but then from here, it's going to spread everywhere too, even if they manage to control theirs. So this is a reckoning that we have to realize that this is not a minor thing that we can get over, just like we did with the H1N1 and then, the other pandemics that happened in the past.
Where do you think it's going, Dr. Rao? I mean, because you're very wise, and I think that people are really, this is what everybody in the United States and maybe the world's wondering is, everybody wonders, how long is this going to go on? When's it going to be over? Now, you're saying that this is part of a transformation to a vegan world, and I certainly believe that you're right, and hope you're right. How is it going? Can you give us, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but can you give us sort of is this Act 1? Is this Act 2? Is this the beginning of Act 3? Where are we in this where are we?
It is the beginning of the transformation. So we are in the beginning stages. Something major has happened that has caused, unemployment rate to go up to almost 20% in the US. So a lot of people are, being affected. We are being affected by this. It happened in the last 2 months. Just think about it. This is just 2 months old, right? It's very hard to tell how long are we going to go in different phases. But the response of the administration so far has not been based on science. And so long as we have leaders responding like this, in a botched manner, then it's hard to control this. So which means that we are going to have to deal with this for the next year and a half at least, right? And it is going to then permanently change who we are. Permanently change our character as a society and what we do to each other, how we deal with each other. It can be for the good or for the bad. So we have to be careful there too. We have to make sure that we start being, we start promoting goodness. We have to create things that we have to create, like, one thing like we did, for 10 days, I was cooking meals for someone we know who didn't have a job, who didn't have any money, who couldn't buy food. So we were just cooking and taking food to them. And we were serving them. And that tided them over so that then the husband got a job. And so now they're able to manage. But these are the kinds of things that we need to be doing now, taking care of each other. And those who can afford to should take care of those who cannot, right? So that we are building this infrastructure for good. So we can create economic activity around good. So I think, I really think that having free and good food available to people is critical. Like take what Tommy's growing in your veganic garden. I see all these beautiful pictures from Renee on her post. And I'm sure there's more coming out of there than you can eat. Right? So
we're getting so food, Sailesh.
I know.
I can't tell you. Tommy's out there working right now. I'm actually in my new home that we built. I'll get to move in here eventually. We got internet here, so it's working great. This is the first time I've gone live here, but we have an acre that I watched Tommy go out there and care for this land like you would care for a child, like you would care for anybody that you love. He has cared for this earth. He will tell you that he doesn't know what he's doing, but what he knows how to do is nurture and care for the soil. And he knows how to take the seeds, and once he's got the ground ready for the seeds, he knows how to lay the seeds in, and he covers them up. Everything's done with very much care. And, I think the problem that people have today is they don't have that connection. They don't have that connection to the soil. Even if it's just a pot in your window, connecting to the soil, connecting in a way that you can see some plants grow and then some fruits, some vegetables come off of it. I mean, I cannot tell you, we've got so many zucchinis right now and yellow crook squash. I mean, it's coming out my ears. And I never seen so many in all my life. I'm cooking it every day, and right now he's got his jalapenos coming, his tomatoes, his corn is coming off. We've had the most amazing lettuce, and so it's all the wild pigs, because the wild pigs figured out that they love the lettuce the best. And so they would come in and just get the lettuce, y'all. And so, but we're not trying to kill the pigs. Well, we're just like, well, I guess they want the lettuce. We tried to distract them with some red lights, but it didn't work. They figure out how to come in and get the lettuce. So I guess we're feeding the wild animals too. We've got tomatoes, we've got chard, we've got carrots, we've got peas of all kinds, onions, we've got garlic growing, asparagus. And I have this, I've never seen anything like this. I mean, when me and Tommy were married the first time, we did a garden, but there's nothing like this. Nothing. It is, we've not put any animal inputs in the soil. We've not fertilized with any chemicals. We've not done none of that. And, it can be done. You just have to want to care about it. And what this pandemic has done for me, and I think my husband too, is it slowed us down so much that we can finally connect to the earth, our mother, the one that is nourishing and wants to nourish us. So what I've got this idea, and I want to know what y'all think about it. I want to create this stand, this produce stand, this old-fashioned, produce stand. And I want to put Rowdy Girl Veganic Farm at the top, with a little logo. And I want to take it out to the front of the, we live a mile down this real rural road. I want to take it out there and I wear my overalls and my red bandana. And I want to go out there like maybe on Fridays from 2 to 5:30 and just play my guitar and just let the farmers come by and say, what the heck is veganic? I mean, to be able to, what kind of activism is that? To be able to just say, well, let me tell you what veganic is. And come on down here. Let me show you, and have some fruits there, to sell very cheap, not expensive, just almost to give it away. We have so much. So anyway, thank you for talking about that. It's I really love watching this garden thrive.
Go live, Renee. You're a contributor. Go live when you're out there. I want to see you in the garden live on Jane Unchained.
Thank you so much. I will do that. I'm trying to figure out how to put together a webinar. I'm talking to our marketing person right now. I want to do a 2-part webinar next month, and I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to do it, but I would love to go live on Jane. I just we're so involved in everything that we're doing. It's
to people, because then you can inspire others to do the same. I recently profiled lettuseat.com. I think it's lettuceeat.com. And it's a company that sells vases, lettucegrow.com. Sorry, lettucegrow.com. And it's a company that I talked to the founder of it. You can grow your own fruits and vegetables in vases, even in your apartment, your back deck. And he said it's vertical farming, and it's an attractive white vase. And it's very interesting. If you could put up the link, lettucegrow.com, because not everybody has a big backyard. But what he was saying is, I have a deck, I could grow, and I'm thinking about it. I don't want to do it unless I'm really going to commit. And I started with growing some grass for my cat, because I used to buy those plastic things that had the cat, the cat eat grass. And I thought, I'm buying plastic. This is disgusting. And then I saw they had seeds. They were selling seeds. And I happened to have these little vases. And I said, I'm going to try this. I was terrified. But I put the seeds in. I was like, this isn't going to work. Next thing you know, they sprouted like crazy, and I couldn't believe it. And I was like, because I'm a city girl. I was born in Midtown Manhattan. I grew up in Midtown Manhattan. This was like a breakthrough for me. So I was kind of scared to make the leap to growing the veggies. I was like, it just, for some reason, it scared me. I don't know. But the fact that I could grow that grass for the cat without buying the plastic with it is kind of like a little breakthrough. And I might get the small vase and just see if I can do it.
Well, look, if y'all follow we have a Facebook page, Rowdy Girl Veganic Farm, because we tried to start one 4 years ago. Kip Anderson was very adamant that we do this, and then we got flooded. And so we lost all of our garden. We lost all of our trees. But now we're resurrecting the veganic idea. But Tommy's also, Jane, he's got a raised bed. So it's not just on the land. He's experimenting with a raised bed. That's where all of our tomatoes and our jalapenos are coming from. And he's repurposing the tubs that all of the cattle licks come in, all of the protein licks. He's repurposing these tubs to grow a bunch of chard. So absolutely, you could grow food in anything. The main thing that just like you said, you're scared to grow the vegetables. Most people are so scared because it's just like, I don't have any kids. God, you know, if God would have given me kids, there's no telling where that kid would be today, because I wasn't growing up, I was pretty wild. I don't know quite what would have happened to that kid. But today, I have a lot more, I want to care for humans, animals, the soil. I want to do that. So give it a go, you know, just care for the dirt, get you a pot and just make it like you want to care for your, you know, your babies at home, your dogs, your cats, you know, care for it. Put that seed in there. Just do your own research about just that plant. Just do a little research and just, it's amazing what comes to life when you just sit with it, water it, and take care of it.
I'm going to do it.
Good.
Is this part of the transformation, Dr. Rao, where people now feel like I need, you know, they did a horrible, I mean, they did a survey of school kids and some of these kids couldn't identify a tomato. They'd never seen an actual tomato. They just knew fast food. So it might sound very, you know, I would say not just unrealistic, but almost, there's a word I can't think of to suggest that people who are struggling right now grow their own vegetables, like kind of a let them eat cake mentality. I feel like people are in crisis, and to say that might come off the wrong way. And obviously we want to do everything we can to feed people who are in need, who are houseless right now. That's why I'm so thrilled with Support and Feed and the work they're doing and trying to help them because it's a great concept. But do you think this overall trend toward getting in touch with food by growing one's own food in any way, shape, or form is part of our transformation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think this is the key to it. Is the transformation in the food system, in food becoming more and more distributed. It's not centralized. You don't have to depend on some central company to send you things. You know, you can just grow your own, and you could contribute to your neighbors. You could contribute to the local restaurants, and they will cook with it, and then they will give you back the food. So it's like the stone soup concept, right? So each one grows their own and brings it in, and then we create a community meal out of it. There'll be more and more of that happening in the transformation. Because when we do that, we realize we are living in a world of abundance. We always have. In fact, even today, we are living in a world of abundance. We are extracting 6 times as much food as we need from nature, but we are feeding 5 of that to our animals, you know, and so they're giving us a little tiny bit of that food. So, and that's what we fight over. Who gets meat? Someone who has more money gets meat. That's the idea, right? So we convince people to strive for eating more meat and to get sick in the process so that we can give them pharmaceuticals. So we are all being factory farmed. We are all being brainwashed and factory farmed into supporting the system. So this is part of freeing yourself, is to start growing your own food. And you know, and contributing to the food system, the local food system that you have, and making sure that everyone gets fed. I think if we get rid of the hunger in the world, you're going to have a new system altogether, right? It's that simple as that. So if we all stop eating meat, there'll be plenty of food. We can get rid of the hunger. So which means the transformation is going to happen as more and more people go vegan. It's going to happen.
There's so much waste built into our system right now too. And I think that, Dr. Rao, as you're saying, having the distributed system where everybody is growing their own, and you know, and if we look, I think that takes a lot of waste out of the system, and also all the opportunity costs that you're talking about with the travel and transporting foods. But it also, if you look at the places where people gather, you know, if you feel like, okay, I can't grow food in my home, churches, community centers, all of those typically have a little bit of land with them where they could start forming community gardens and having people, come together to take care of the food and share the food. And I think there's just tons of opportunity, even if you don't feel like you can do it yourself in your home. There's tons of opportunity for places where we can have local community gardens that we can share in.
Yeah, the transformation of the food system is the core transformation. It's the fundamental transformation that leads to transformation in everything else around it. Okay? Because the current food system is the place where all the oppression starts. But then you look at patriarchy, what we do to animals, that's patriarchy, right? 101. Just to grow animals, we are going and taking forests from indigenous people and saying that's ours. That's colonialism, 101. That's the first thing you do in colonialism is go to someone else and say, your culture is inferior to ours, and so therefore you have to get out of the way because we're going to use your land for our purposes. So that's colonialism. And you talk about racism. It's built into the food system. The animal foods are, dripping with racism. We make colored people work there in the slaughterhouses. We go and situate our slaughterhouses near where they live. So we dump the waste into their water. It's an utterly racist system. So all of the oppressions, you can see them rolled into one in the food system. So when we support that food system, we are supporting all of these oppressions. We are supporting colonialism. We are supporting racism, supporting patriarchy. This is why as feminists, we shouldn't be buying animal foods. This is why Black Lives Matter should not be eating animal foods, because we see that when we do that, we are impacting them. Yes.
Well, LULAC, which is the largest Latin American civil rights organization, just started Meatless May. I interviewed Joe Enriquez Henry, who is the Iowa State Director of LULAC and one of the advisors to the national organization. And so they are talking about boycotting meat to speak up for the workers, most of whom are immigrants, many of whom are Latin immigrants, Latin American immigrants, but from all over the world. In one slaughterhouse alone, 30 languages were spoken. So you have people from places like Bosnia, Africa, Latin America, all over the world. And so they are now jumping on the meat. That's their slogan, Meatless May, LULAC. And I know Victoria Moran from the Main Street Vegan Academy is working with them to give them vegan ideas. And also they may very well be working with the SAFE movement as well. So there is, I think, a huge opening that we need to, explore and to work with these union organizations. That is super important. Just like Renee's working with the farmers, we need to work with the union organizations.
Absolutely.
And help them become vegan.
Yeah. Not only help them become vegan, offer them free whole food plant-based meals. Give them free vegan food. If you're a LULAC member, you get it. They will then stop this. They will have a way out. So if you can feed your belly, you will stop doing the kind of work that you're forced to do, right? And working in a slaughterhouse is something that you're forced to do. You never want to do that. These people are, they're victims. The workers there are victims. Just like the animals there are victims.
Well, somebody said now they're slaughterhouses for people.
Right. Yeah, they are.
There was a protest according to...
they have doubled the rate of
infection
as any other.
BJ, can you tell us about what you said? Unmute yourself.
A large group of people went down to Center, Texas today, right outside of Houston, to protest a Tyson slaughterhouse there. They had 55 COVID cases. 3 people had died in that plant alone. And so they were out there protesting today.
Where did you hear about it? Is there a news story on it?
Dani Alexander is there. And no, not a big news, but she's there. And I heard about it last night. I couldn't go, but yeah, in fact, it may be still going on. They may still be there.
Yeah, I heard from Dani this morning. She's there.
Why wouldn't she do a Jane Unchained live video from there?
Yeah, that'd be great. Mallory, gosh, I can't think of her last name, did a live video this morning, which I posted around in places to let people know, because it needs to be happening all over. In fact, Dr. Bernard was up north doing a protest at slaughterhouses there with other doctors. And there's some videos on that. I mean, he is really coming out strong right now about the slaughterhouses and the meat connection. And as a physician, he can
Dani
talk about
Alexander.
that. Did y'all get to see those videos yet?
Sorry, Dani Alexander.
I saw a Facebook post on Dr. Barnard's video, and I definitely want to go back and check that out.
Yeah. She said Tyson has over 4,500 cases of COVID in their plants right now and over 18 deaths. That's enough. I mean, 3 is enough, but especially when you have all the breathing and the messing in the secretions of all these animals. When you have COVID in there, the virus is just going to stay there and be transported, and they can't clean it. You can't clean each piece of meat.
Right. No, Texas is the worst. I mean, I think it's just the worst right now. Texas is really bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's a message from nature saying stop it.
Yeah. Saying stop it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I heard from Anita Kreitz yesterday about this union, and she told me all about it, and I'm so supportive, and I will do whatever she needs me to do. I think she's wanting me to be on some call with union leaders, just to be, because of our background and all as former cattle ranchers, and just to let them know that, we support them, and that there's others like us. We're not, that other farmers, other cattle ranchers that would support them.
I've been posting on some of the local Lockhart pages and county pages around here, just letting them know. And of course, some of them are very defensive and, because, but I feel like it's important for everybody to know, not just those easy fruit, those people that are easy and ready to go. I think everybody needs to know.
The thing I did see the other day, I caught the tail end of a program on CNN. Fareed Zakaria had a program on the post-COVID-19 world, and I caught his conclusion, and his conclusion was all about the slaughterhouses and their implications in this whole thing. And he did say not just the wet markets, the slaughterhouses, and he showed pictures, and he showed the pictures of the chickens all crammed together, and the way that the livestock and the chickens are raised, and the way in the slaughterhouse and everything. And he was very strong on, I mean, I was surprised to see him come out like that on CNN, but it was awesome. I actually transcribed his conclusion at the end of it and posted it on Facebook.
Can you send that to me?
Yeah, sure.
I have the video. I haven't had a chance to read it, but I'd love to have the actual transcript.
I was at that wet market in Houston that Dani Rukin, Dali Alexander was at a couple years ago. It was a wet market. I mean, it's considered a halal slaughterhouse where they would sell the animal bodies, the parts of the bodies out front, and they had a little cafe out front, and behind that, where they sold all the hacked up bodies, was all the animals that you could, and we went in there, and I was just like blown away at what I was actually seeing. I mean, we went in the freezer cases. I wish Dani Rukin was here to talk about this, because it was, all these pigs that were out in the pens the bodies were just hanging right next to all that in these refrigerated cases. They had just been killed and stripped. When I saw a family come in, and a mom, a dad, and two kids, and they picked out this little goat. I'll never forget this goat being pulled away. It just, to see that, and it just, those are wet markets right in Houston. We have them here or there, So yeah, we gotta stop this. I'm so glad Dani, Alexander is pretty relentless in all this right now.
She's all the time, but she doesn't do it anymore.
Yeah, I don't know I haven't talked to her. I just kind of reached out to her today just to see how she was doing, and she told me, I'm all stressed out. I'm at a Tyson plant, and this was like at 7 a.m. I said, right now? She said, yes. And I said, girl, you need to get to Rowdy.
Because I just texted her, but you could text her. She might listen to you.
I said, yeah, I will. I said, you need to come out and be with the animals. And she said, I'm coming to clean poop. So.
I think we should connect support and feed with LULAC. So LULAC members should get free food from support and feed.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. I'll suggest that. I will suggest that. Fantastic.
That's a great idea. Really?
Yeah, that's a great
idea. That's brilliant.
Yeah. This is where things happen. We've got a comment from Facebook about Cargill Slaughterhouse near Calgary is responsible for one of the worst outbreaks of COVID-19 in North America. And other towns were having restrictions, but they said, no, not you, Calgary, you don't have to. And so they're hazardous to everyone. And he just wanted to let you know that was Miles letting us know about that.
Awesome. Thank you.
And then another person asked, what about how are we going to get Republicans to come around? And maybe maybe it isn't a Republican Democratic thing, but maybe it is. And maybe you'd like to address that question from Joy.
Well, I would like to say something about that. The Democrats have been horrible on this issue. If you looked at the Democratic candidates, both, in other words, it's bipartisan willful blindness and cognitive dissonance, with the exception of Cory Booker. And there's been some change recently, but if you remember during the primary season, all the Democratic candidates were running around at steak fries and eating fried chicken talking about climate change. They were completely oblivious, with the exception of Cory Booker, and Tulsi Gabbard's also a vegan. But she was obviously not a high profile candidate. But I was disgusted, but we did have a breakthrough recently. Cory Booker has proposed a bill. He's the senator from New Jersey who also happens to be vegan, who was a presidential candidate, to phase out concentrated animal feeding operations, which are really our modern day quote unquote farms. They're just warehouses filled with tortured animals. And Elizabeth Warren is backing and I believe co-sponsoring that bill. So it's Elizabeth Warren and Cory Booker proposing a bill to end CAFOs. What changed? I don't know the exact timeline, but I feel that those like the Rachel Maddows of the world, who don't appear to have any consideration for the animal suffering, when it becomes a politicized issue, because this is now a civil rights issue and a human rights issue, and the workers are clearly being sent to their deaths, potentially, because they're being forced to go to these slaughterhouses and they're dying, they're getting infected and they're dying, and they're spreading it to people in their community. Now it's a civil rights issue. Now it's politicized. So I think that the Democrats are going to start to wake up a little bit on this, but because Iowa is the first state in the presidential process, there's always been a big reluctance to criticize animal agriculture. Many reasons. Also, the meat, dairy, and pharmaceutical industries are hugely powerful in Washington, et cetera, et cetera. But I do feel like now that it's become a workers' rights and a human rights and a civil rights issue, it should be politically, shameful to consume meat. If you consider yourself, just like environmentalists should not consume meat, and it should be shameful for anybody who's an environmentalist to host a gala that contains meat or eat meat. Unfortunately, as you know, Dr. Rao, I ran into a brick wall trying to get the climate strikers to open up to that issue, which actually turned out to be a blessing in that I was so upset about it. I asked Dr. Rao, somebody's got to write a white paper. And of course, being the genius he is, he turned around and just produced a white paper showing that animal agriculture is responsible for 87% of greenhouse gas emissions, which is a very important white paper. And now I think that there is going to be a sea change in that if people consider themselves progressive and not in the category of people who want to go out of their way to oppress people of color, people who are of lower socioeconomic groups, people who feel like they're in favor of workers' rights, for them to eat animals, it's shameful just from that one perspective. So it'd be interesting to see if, the Rachel Maddow's of the world. Rachel Maddow has done a great job covering a lot of these slaughterhouse problems. Night after night after night, she is bringing it up and talking about it and interviewing the union workers and interviewing various other people. So it's never from a perspective of the animal suffering. There's even the word slaughterhouse is almost never used. It's always meat plant or meat processing plant, but at least it's a step in the right direction, Dr. Rao.
Right. Yeah, and it is. I found that in this discussion, even conservative people are on our side. You find like Matthew Scully, he wrote this great article for National Review, basically calling out the executive order and saying it is immoral. It's absolutely immoral what they're trying to do. So, I don't think that the normal division between the left and right really applies here. It's all of us are in this together, and you see people from different sides just jumping up and saying, I agree with you, and that we have to do this for the animals. Ultimately, we have to look at this. Go ahead, Renee.
No, go ahead. I thought you had stopped. I was just going to say, I saw somewhere where Michelle Obama was backing Beyond Meat.
Right.
She's, and that's a big, big thing. That's a big deal. And, and I also think that, as people go vegan, I know for me, I never really considered myself Democrat or Republican. I've always tried to be in the middle somewhere. But when I went vegan, I went so far to the left. I am so, it totally flipped my switch. And, I didn't even realize I was racist. And I realized when I went vegan that I was racist. Not consciously, but unconsciously, I was a racist. And going vegan switched all that now, I think we're going to see more and more that people are going to be coming out of the closet in many ways when they go vegan, about issues like that,
We're earthlings. We're all earthlings.
Yeah.
We're one. This pandemic has proven that it didn't matter about no wall. Forget the wall. The pandemic goes right through the wall. So to me, this was proof that our focus was on the wrong thing politically. Politically, we should not be thinking about, putting so much emphasis on a wall. We should be thinking about how we're going to work together and be able to coexist. This pandemic knows no boundaries. Sure.
Nature's teaching tool.
The equalizer, the great equalizer.
Right. I see it as the animals, animals have been co-creating everything with us. They actually sacrifice their own bodies to make this happen. And now they're telling us, look, enough of your sociopathic behavior. We are done with that. Now you have to switch. So it's making us all wake up so that we can take on our true identity, returning home to who we really are. That's what going vegan is. We're returning home to who we really are.
I want to ask you a question, Dr. Rao, because I have this hat. So when I would go around, like when I walk the dogs with this hat, okay, so let's do the whole look here. And you can add the sunglasses too. And I found that when I was wearing this hat, my neighbors did not engage with me. And then when I would be like this, they would talk to me. What do you think about that? Too much? Too much?
No, it's okay. Basically, you are reminding them of something. Yeah, it's good that you're reminding them. It brings it to the surface.
Yeah, I pay a price for it though, because they don't appear to like it. They avoid me.
Yeah, that's their problem, not yours. I mean, you are just telling. That's their problem, not yours, because you are just telling the truth. You're just wearing something. I mean,
Yeah.
How can a word make someone go crazy like that? Especially a word that's about compassion.
Yeah. Oh, I like this. Claire says, ensure social distancing by wearing your vegan hat. That's a great line. Thank you. Well, you've given me, I took it off for a couple of days because I was like, these are the only people I'm around and they're avoiding me. But now I'm going to put it back on. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? But I have a question about the politics that are going on right now inside our own movement around COVID. Like, there's the politics around, I mean, I didn't know this, but there are vegans that are really ready to get out there and be amongst everybody. And they're saying that we are causing more problems isolating than we are if we would just go out. And then there's the whole other side politically where it's like, no way, I don't know. I just see there's a division, a political division right now amongst vegans. Because I put a question on my wall the other day and I had no idea where this was going to go. I didn't even think about it, honestly. I just, I'm just so secluded over here. I mean, the only place I go is HEB every 2 weeks with my mask and my Mita's murder cap. And, it's HEB, and I got my little PETA mask too, and so, I mean, that's the only place I go every 2 weeks. And so I saw something scroll by that said, something to the extent of we are, we're letting them, take all of our family, put them in hospitals. We can't go see them. We can't go anywhere. It's like, and I was like, but I thought we weren't supposed to go anywhere. I thought we were supposed to wear our masks and stay home. And then all of a sudden I'm seeing this and I'm like, well, maybe, what's true here, And I put that out there. I mean, I got pretty blasted. Rebecca, you might have seen it. But anyway, what is that? What is that about?
Yeah,
Dr.
I mean,
Rao.
as vegans, we have seen the lies, right? We have seen the lies that the institutions tell. They still lie. You can see them still lying about protein, about calcium and all this nonsense, right? You see them lying. So then you start questioning, maybe this is also a lie. Is this virus also a lie? Is this also being done to control us, to make us stay in our homes and, and then put some vaccine into us? And, so people are questioning everything. Right. And so some people say, yeah, it's a lie. The whole thing is a lie. So I'm not going to believe anything because I've seen them lie about other things. Right. And and others are saying, no, you need to listen to the government because, they're trying to help. They are trying to, they have some good in them. It's not like they're all liars, that they lie about everything. So it's that dichotomy, right? Because we have seen many other lies, and so we're now just questioning things. And so I say the way I deal with it is basically figure out what is the good I can do given the situation that we are in, right? What is the good I can do so that we can get to a vegan world? So we can get to a vegan world as quickly as possible. I don't want to spend too much time trying to explain the past. I have my, we have to have a story around some of these things, but basically that's not the main focus. The main focus should be what can we do today to help us get to a vegan world as soon as possible. And so then I don't engage in these things too much. I mean, I do ask questions about why is the medical establishment still not telling people that we don't need to eat this stuff? Why are they standing around when it's being declared as critical infrastructure? It is not critical infrastructure, right? That I hold them responsible. I think the medical establishment should be saying that now. The AMA should be saying that. The coronavirus task force should be saying that. The CDC should be saying that. We should be opposing this executive order that's forcing people to go and work in these hellholes and kill themselves off. For what? Is this supposed to be their war? Their war is to get us burgers? I mean, that's their war? I mean, what the hell? So I question that kind of framing, and I think it's important to question those things. But I don't spend too much time arguing about how this virus came about and whether it's all a false flag. It's not relevant. Yeah. It's not as important. We need to know that it came from animals. That's it.
That's it. That's it.
It's a message from the animals saying, stop it. So we'll figure out how to stop it. Anyway, thank you all very, very much. We have gone beyond 11 o'clock now, and I'm really looking forward to the afternoon discussion. I think we covered a lot. It helped me clear my thoughts too, and I'm sure it's helped a lot of people clear their thoughts. Jane, you are on mute.
At 3 o'clock, when we talk about Countdown to Year Zero, we're going to have Amy Jean Davis and Ellen Dent from Los Angeles Animal Save on.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
All of this, you give me hope for our world. And every time I get like overwhelmed and think, read a headline where like in the New York Times, they show all these poor baby pigs packed into this horrible thing and they call it a nursery. Shame on them. Excuse me, I get upset. But then I talk to you and you manage to keep that big picture outlook, and that just, I kind of readjust my attitude again so I don't get angry, because that doesn't really help. But then you show me the big picture that this is sort of a mess. These transitions are messy. It's a wild ride, but we're moving in the direction that we need to move. So thank you. You really helped me stay focused on the goal as opposed to getting mired in, the everyday bumps and grinds of it, because that can be very, very, if you allow yourself to just get focused on one negative thing, it can keep you from moving forward. So you help me move forward and stay on just do the next indicated thing, the next indicated thing, next thing. Don't worry about the results. It's going there.
Awesome. Thank you. You helped me so much. You don't know.
Oh, well, right back at you.
Thank you. Both of you. Thank you very much.
Love you, everybody.
I love you guys.
Love you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Back from 3 to 5 Pacific.
All right. See you then.
See you then.